The Johnson family had lived in Oakwood Estates for nearly 3 years. It was a neighborhood with manicured lawns, well-maintained homes, and a reputation for good schools that had attracted Marcus and Keisha when they were looking for a place to raise their son, Jamal. As one of only 4 black families in the predominantly white subdivision, they had grown accustomed to the subtle glances and occasional microaggressions, but had managed to carve out a comfortable life despite them. July in Georgia brought sweltering heat that seemed to melt the asphalt and made the air thick enough to swim through. Jamal's 8th birthday fell on one of those oppressively hot weekends, and Marcus had been planning a surprise for months, saving from his accountant's salary while Keisha picked up extra nursing shifts to make it happen. "Keep your eyes closed, birthday boy," Marcus said, leading Jamal by the shoulders to their back door and into the yard that Saturday morning. Keisha followed with her phone ready to record. "Can I look now?" Jamal bounced on his toes, practically vibrating with excitement. "Okay, now." Jamal opened his eyes to see a 15-foot above-ground pool dominating their modest backyard, already filled with crystal-clear water that sparkled in the morning sunlight. A small set of steps led up to the edge, and floating toys waited on the surface. The boy's eyes widened to perfect circles. "Is that for me? For us?" His voice rose to a pitch that only 8-year-old boys experiencing pure joy could achieve. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," Keisha said, smiling so wide her cheeks hurt. Jamal launched himself at his parents, wrapping his arms around them both. "This is the best present ever. Can I get in now? Please?" Marcus laughed. "That's why I filled it yesterday while you were at Grandma's. Go put on your swim trunks." The rest of the day passed in a blur of splashing, laughter, and the particular kind of happiness that comes from watching a child experience something they've always wanted. Marcus fired up the grill while Keisha called family members to come over for an impromptu pool party. By mid-afternoon, the backyard was filled with Jamal's cousins, his Aunt Tamika, and his grandparents, all taking turns in the pool while music played from a portable speaker. "This was worth every penny and every drop of sweat," Marcus said to Keisha as they watched Jamal, teaching his younger cousin how to float on her back. Setting up the pool had taken an entire weekend of leveling ground, laying sand, and carefully following instructions, but seeing his son's joy made the sore muscles and sunburn insignificant. It was around 5 in the evening, as hamburgers sizzled on the grill in Summertime by DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince played in the background, when Marcus first noticed Diane Matthews watching from her second-story window. The 50-something woman with meticulously highlighted blonde hair lived in the house directly behind theirs, and while they exchanged the occasional nod when taking out trash or collecting mail, they'd never had a real conversation. What caught Marcus' attention wasn't just that she was watching, it was the tight-lipped expression on her face, the way her arms were folded across her chest, and how she made no attempt to look away when he noticed her. Instead, she deliberately pulled her curtains closed with a sharp tug that seemed to communicate disapproval. "You see that?" Marcus murmured to Keisha, nodding toward the now-covered window. Keisha followed his gaze and shrugged. "Some people just can't stand seeing others having fun. Don't let it bother you. This is Jamal's day." Marcus nodded and turned back to the grill, pushing the encounter from his mind. There was no reason to let one neighbor's sour attitude dampen what had shaped up to be a perfect day for their family. As the evening progressed with dessert and presents, neither of them could have anticipated how that disapproving look was just the beginning of what would become a summer-long nightmare. 3 days after Jamal's birthday party, the afternoon air hummed with the sound of children's laughter. Jamal had invited his 2 best friends from school over to enjoy the pool, and Keisha supervised from the patio while grading papers for her summer school class. The boys took turns performing increasingly elaborate cannonballs, each one trying to outdo the others with the size of their splash. "Hey, you need to keep it down over there." The sharp voice cut through the children's play like a knife. Keisha looked up to see Diane Matthews standing at the fence that separated their properties, her hands gripping the wooden slats so tightly her knuckles had turned white. "Excuse me." Keisha set her papers aside and walked toward the fence. "I said, you need to keep the noise down. I can barely hear myself think with all this racket." Diane's eyes narrowed as she glanced at the 3 boys who had gone quiet in the pool, watching the exchange with uncertain expressions. Keisha checked her watch, 2:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, and kept her voice measured. "I understand you're concerned about the noise, Ms. Matthews, but the boys are just playing, and it's the middle of the afternoon. There's no noise ordinance in effect right now. Well, I work from home and I have important calls. Perhaps you people don't understand professional courtesy." The emphasis on "you people" wasn't lost on Keisha, but she refused to take the bait. "I'm a teacher, Ms. Matthews. I understand professionalism quite well. The boys will try to keep it down a bit, but they are children enjoying summer vacation." Diane scoffed but retreated back into her house with a final disapproving glare. Keisha turned to the boys with a reassuring smile. It's okay, guys. Just try not to scream quite so much, all right? The incident might have been isolated if it had ended there, but 2 days later, Marcus was skimming leaves from the pool when Diane appeared again. "Your pool is leaking onto my property," she announced without preamble. Marcus looked up, surprised. "I'm sorry. Water. On my side of the fence. It's killing my hydrangeas." She pointed accusingly at the fence line. Marcus set down the skimmer and walked over. "Let me take a look. We certainly don't want to damage your garden." He examined both sides of the fence carefully but found no evidence of water seepage. The ground was dry, and her hydrangeas, while slightly wilted in the summer heat, showed no signs of water damage. "I don't see any leakage, Ms. Matthews, but I'll keep an eye on it. We've been careful about maintaining the proper water level." "Well, something's killing them, and it started when you put that eyesore in." She gestured dismissively at the pool. "And you've had entirely too many visitors lately. The street is always clogged with cars." Marcus took a deep breath. "We've had a few friends over, yes. That's what summer is for. This used to be a quiet neighborhood before." She let the sentence hang, unfinished but clear in its implication. Over the next week, the pattern continued. On Friday, Diane complained about music, playing at a reasonable volume during a small family cookout. On Saturday, she called over the fence about suspicious characters when Keisha's brother stopped by with his teenage sons. By Sunday, she had progressed to taking photos of their backyard from her second-story window. That evening, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with a notebook, documenting each interaction with times and dates. "What are you doing?" Keisha asked, setting a cup of coffee beside him. "Keeping records," he replied, his expression grim. "Her complaints are getting more frequent, and the language she's using, it's getting less subtle." "You think we'll need this?" Marcus looked up at his wife. "I hope not, but I've lived long enough to know when someone's problem isn't really about noise or water or visitors. This is about who we are, not what we're doing." Keisha nodded, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Jamal asked me today why the lady next door doesn't like him." Marcus closed the notebook, his jaw tightening. "What did you tell him?" "That some people are unhappy with themselves and look for reasons to be unhappy with others. But I'm worried, Marcus. I don't want this to escalate." Neither of them realized that Diane Matthews had already decided to take her grievances to the next level. The following day, she would be waiting at the Homeowners Association office when it opened, armed with a list of alleged violations and a determination to get that pool removed. 2 weeks into what should have been the highlight of Jamal's summer, the atmosphere in the Johnson household had shifted. The carefree joy of having a backyard pool was now overshadowed by tension. Marcus had installed security cameras around the property after receiving a dismissive response from the Homeowners Association regarding Diane's complaints. They had determined no violations had occurred, but the experience left him uneasy. That Wednesday, both Marcus and Keisha had to work, so Grandma Loretta came over to watch Jamal. At 67, Loretta Wilson still had the energy of someone 20 years younger and the wisdom that came from raising 3 children in the South during more openly hostile times. "Go on and enjoy your pool, baby," Loretta told Jamal after lunch. "I'll be right here on the patio with my book." Jamal didn't need to be told twice. He cannonballed into the water and began practicing the backstroke his swim instructor had shown him the previous week. He had connected his small Bluetooth speaker to play his favorite songs, keeping the volume moderate as his parents had instructed. Loretta had just settled into her chair when Diane's face appeared above the fence line. "Excuse me," Diane called out, her voice sharp. "That music is completely inappropriate for this neighborhood." Loretta looked up, surprised. The speaker was playing Happy by Pharrell Williams at a volume that barely reached the fence line. "The music seems fine to me," Loretta replied calmly, "but we can turn it down a bit if it's bothering you." Diane's face flushed. "It's not just the volume. It's the type of music. This isn't that kind of neighborhood." Jamal had stopped swimming and was treading water, watching the exchange with wide eyes. "And what kind of neighborhood would that be, exactly?" Loretta asked, her voice still pleasant but with an edge of steel beneath it. "You know exactly what I mean," Diane snapped. "This was a nice, quiet place before you all moved in." Jamal climbed out of the pool and reached for the speaker, but Diane wasn't finished. "Turn that garbage off now, boy, or I'll call the police." Loretta stood up, her full height of 5'3" somehow imposing. "You will not speak to my grandson that way." "I'll speak however I want on my property," Diane hissed, then looked directly at Jamal. "This neighborhood isn't fern." The slur fell from her lips with practiced ease, followed by, "I'm going to take care of this problem myself." Jamal froze, the speaker clutched in his hands, a look of confusion and hurt washing over his face. Loretta moved quickly to his side, wrapping a towel around his shoulders. "Go inside, baby. Right now." Her voice was gentle but firm. When Marcus and Keisha arrived home that evening, they found Loretta in the kitchen, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by contained fury as she recounted the incident. She said what to him? Marcus's voice was dangerously quiet. Gemma sat at the table, pushing pasta around his plate. Why does she hate us, Dad? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications no 8-year-old should have to understand. After dinner, once Jamal was settled in front of a movie with Loretta, Marcus walked next door. He rang Diane's doorbell twice before she answered, her expression soaring when she saw him. We need to talk about what happened today, Marcus began, keeping his voice calm and controlled despite the anger simmering beneath. I have nothing to say to you, Diane replied, moving to close the door. Marcus placed his hand on the door. My son is 8 years old. Whatever issues you have with us, they have nothing to do with him. Take your hand off my door before I call the police, Diane threatened. Your kind always resorts to intimidation. My kind is a father protecting his child, Marcus replied. I'm asking you, neighbor to neighbor, to keep your problems with us between adults. Your property values are dropping because of you, Diane spat. You're bringing down the whole neighborhood with your loud music and your swimming pool and your constant visitors. Some of us worked hard to live here. We didn't get here through some diversity program. Marcus took a step back, recognizing the futility of the conversation. I've documented everything, Diane, including today. If you ever speak to my son that way again, we'll be having a different conversation with authorities present. As he walked away, Diane called after him. This isn't over. You think that pool is staying? We'll see about that. Marcus didn't turn around, but his shoulders tensed. The confrontation had confirmed what he already knew. This wasn't about noise or property values or homeowners association rules. It was about something much older and uglier, and it wasn't going to go away on its own. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect summer day that typically brought joy to the Johnson household. Marcus woke early, planning to clean the pool before the day's heat set in. He slipped quietly from bed, careful not to wake Keisha, and padded down the hallway in his slippers. Coffee in hand, Marcus stepped onto the back patio and froze mid-sip. The sight before him didn't register at first. It seemed impossible, disconnected from reality. Their beautiful pool, Jamal's pride and joy, was partially collapsed on one side, murky water seeping into the grass. As he moved closer, the acrid smell of bleach stung his nostrils. Keisha, he called, his voice cracking. Keisha, come out here. His wife appeared moments later, tying her robe. What's wrong? Why are you? She stopped, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh my God. Marcus circled the pool, cataloging the damage. Multiple puncture holes dotted the vinyl liner, strategically placed to ensure complete failure. The water had a sickly, cloudy appearance, and dead patches of grass marked where it had spilled out overnight. Who would do this? Keisha whispered, but they both knew the answer. Marcus walked to the security camera mounted under the eaves and pulled out his phone. He navigated to the app that stored the footage and began scrolling back through the overnight hours. At 2:17 a.m., the infrared camera captured a figure slipping through their back gate, Diane Matthews, unmistakable even in the grainy night vision, carrying what looked like garden shears and a large container. The footage showed her methodically circling the pool, puncturing it at multiple points before unscrewing the container and pouring its contents into the water. The entire act took less than 10 minutes, but the malice behind it had been building for weeks. We need to call the police, Keisha said, her initial shock hardening into resolve. This is destruction of property. Before Marcus could respond, the back door opened and Jamal stepped out, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Dad, I heard shouting. Is everything. His voice died as he saw the ruins of his pool. His face crumpled, tears welling instantly. My pool, he whispered. What happened to my pool? Keisha wrapped an arm around his shoulders. Someone damaged it, baby. But don't worry, we're going to fix it. It was her, wasn't it? Jamal's voice was small but certain. The mean lady who called me that name. Marcus knelt to eye level with his son. We're going to handle this, Jamal. I promise you. While Keisha took Jamal inside for breakfast, Marcus called the police. Officer Rivera and her partner arrived within 20 minutes, professionally documenting the scene and reviewing the security footage. This is clear criminal trespass and vandalism. Officer Rivera confirmed, her expression grave as she watched the video for a second time. The chemical introduction could potentially elevate this. Bleach is hazardous. As the officers were completing their report, commotion at the front of the house drew their attention. Marcus walked around to find Diane Matthews standing on his front lawn, berating Keisha through the screen door. You people think you can just take over with your noise and your eyesores? This is a respectable neighborhood. Officer Rivera stepped forward. Ma'am, I need you to step back and calm down. Diane whirled around, momentarily startled by the police presence before regaining her composure. Thank goodness you're here. These people have been harassing me for weeks. Actually, Ms. Matthews, we're here investigating criminal property damage, Officer Rivera replied, her tone neutral but firm. We have video evidence of you trespassing on this property last night and vandalizing their pool." "That's ridiculous," Diane sputtered, though her face had drained of color. "They've been the problem all along. They don't belong here." From the porch where neighbors had begun to gather, someone's phone camera recorded as Diane's denials devolved into a tirade of racial epithets. Her voice rose to a shriek that carried down the street, drawing more onlookers. "I was protecting my property values. People like them bring down the whole neighborhood. I did what the HOA was too scared to do." Officer Rivera calmly placed a hand on Diane's arm. "Ms. Matthews, you need to come with us to the station to answer some questions." As Diane was escorted to the police car, still ranting about protecting the neighborhood, Marcus noticed several neighbors recording the scene on their phones. The public meltdown would soon become evidence not just of vandalism, but of the hatred that had motivated it. By Sunday morning, the video of Diane Matthews, now widely known as Pool Karen across social media, had accumulated over 300,000 views. The clip, captured by the Johnsons' neighbor Elena Rodriguez, showed Diane's unfiltered tirade and subsequent arrest in unflinching detail. Local news stations had picked up the story, and a reporter from Channel 7 stood on the sidewalk outside the Johnson home, microphone in hand. "We're here at the site of what's being called a racially motivated property crime in Oakwood Estates. According to police reports, a local woman vandalized her neighbor's pool after weeks of escalating harassment targeting the family's 8-year-old son." Marcus watched the report from his living room window, feeling a complex mix of emotions. The publicity was uncomfortable, but there was also a sense of validation. What they had endured wasn't imagined or exaggerated. It was real enough that strangers across the city were now witnessing it. The doorbell rang, and Marcus tensed before opening it to find Tom and Sarah Chen from 4 houses down, a couple he'd exchanged pleasantries with but never really known. "We saw what happened," Tom said, holding out a casserole dish. "Sarah made her famous lasagna. We thought you might not feel like cooking today." Before Marcus could properly thank them, another neighbor arrived with a grocery bag of snacks and drinks. Then came the Patel family with a card signed by their children. Throughout the day, a steady stream of neighbors, some familiar, many barely acquaintances, stopped by with food, cards, and offers of support. "We had no idea what was going on," explained Mrs. Abernathy, a retiree from across the street. "If we'd known she was harassing your family, we would have stepped in sooner." By mid-afternoon, Elena had created an online fundraiser titled "New Pool for Jamal." She showed Keisha her phone, where the total had already surpassed $5,000, far exceeding the cost of replacing your damaged pool. "People want to help," Elena explained. "It's not just about the pool anymore. It's about showing that this kind of behavior doesn't represent our community." Jamal, who had been quiet and withdrawn since discovering the vandalism, perked up when he saw the outpouring of support. A group of children from his school had dropped off a handmade card covered in drawings of pools and messages like, "We can't wait to swim with you again." "Do you really think we can get another pool, Mom?" he asked Keisha, hope creeping back into his voice. "Yes, baby," she assured him. "And it looks like it might be an even better one." The publicity had other effects, too. The president of the Homeowners Association called Marcus personally to apologize for not taking their earlier complaints more seriously and to inform him that the board was drafting new anti-discrimination policies. "We want to be crystal clear that what happened to your family is not acceptable in Oakwood Estates," she explained. "We're scheduling sensitivity training for all board members, and we'd like your input on how we can do better." Even Diane's next-door neighbor on the other side, an elderly man named Mr. Franklin, who rarely socialized, emerged to offer his security camera footage from the night of the incident, providing additional evidence from a different angle. "Never liked that woman," he confided to Marcus. "Always complaining about something. But this crossed every line." As evening fell, Keisha found Marcus sitting alone on their patio, staring at the damaged pool that would soon be replaced. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, sitting beside him. "I'm thinking about how we almost considered moving," he replied. "After the incident with Jamal and your mom, I was ready to start looking at houses in a different neighborhood. And now I'm thinking we have more allies here than we realized. People willing to stand up and say, this isn't right. That matters." Across the fence, Diane's house sat dark and empty. She had been released on bail but hadn't returned home, reportedly staying with a relative while awaiting her court date. The contrast wasn't lost on Marcus, one house abandoned in shame, while their home was surrounded by a newly awakened community of support. "We're not going anywhere," he said firmly. "This is our home too." 3 weeks after the incident, the Johnson family stood in their backyard admiring their new pool. It was larger than the original, with a sturdy deck surrounding it and improved filtration system. The community fundraiser had ultimately collected over $12,000, enough for significant upgrades and additional security features, including motion-activated lights and an enhanced camera system. "What do you think, buddy?" Marcus asked, his hand on Jamal's shoulder. The boy's smile was answer enough. It's amazing, Dad. Way better than before. Tom Chen from down the street approached with a cooler. Inspection passed yesterday, right? So today's the big opening day? Marcus nodded. We're having a little neighborhood get-together this afternoon. A thank you to everyone who helped out. What had started as a small thank you gathering evolved into an impromptu block party. By mid-afternoon, dozens of neighbors filled the Johnsons' backyard and spilled onto adjoining properties. Children splashed in the pool while adults grilled, shared dishes, and mingled in a way that many longtime residents couldn't recall happening before. Elena Rodriguez, whose video had catalyzed the community response, sat beside Keisha on the patio. Have you heard anything about Diane? She asked quietly. Keisha nodded. The prosecutor called yesterday. She accepted a plea deal, criminal trespass, and vandalism with hate crime enhancements. She'll serve 200 hours of community service at a cultural diversity center downtown, pay restitution, and attend mandatory diversity training sessions. There's also a restraining order keeping her 500 feet from our family. Is she coming back to the neighborhood? No. Her house went on the market yesterday. Marcus saw the sign when he was jogging. Near the refreshment table, Mrs. Abernathy was deep in conversation with the HOA president and several other board members. Their discussion had started weeks earlier and had resulted in concrete changes, new anti-discrimination clauses in the community bylaws, a diversity committee with representation from various cultural backgrounds, and a neighborhood welcome program for new residents. We should have done this years ago, Mrs. Abernathy was saying. It shouldn't have taken something so ugly to make us realize we weren't the community we thought we were. As evening approached, Jamal and his friends organized an impromptu pool basketball tournament, their laughter filling the air. Watching from the edge of the gathering, Marcus felt a presence beside him and turned to find Mr. Franklin, Diane's former next-door neighbor. Quite a transformation, the older man observed. The pool? Marcus asked. The neighborhood, Mr. Franklin clarified. Lived here 22 years. Never knew half these people's names before. Now look at them. Marcus nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. The incident had forced a reckoning within Oakwood Estates, confronting the uncomfortable truth that their nice, quiet neighborhood had tolerated underlying prejudice through silence and inaction. Later that night, after the guests had departed and Jamal had fallen asleep exhausted from hours of swimming, Marcus and Keisha sat on their new deck, the pool lights casting a gentle blue glow across the water. He asked me a harder question today, Keisha said softly. Jamal, what did you ask? He wanted to know why Ms. Matthews hated us so much when she didn't even know us. How do you explain generational hatred to an 8-year-old? Marcus was quiet for a moment. What did you tell him? I told him that some people are taught to fear what's different and fear can turn to hate if no one challenges it. But I also told him to look around at all the people who came today, people of every color and background standing together. I told him that's what community really means. The following weekend, the Johnsons hosted the first of what would become an annual tradition, an end-of-summer pool party celebrating diversity and inclusion in Oakwood Estates. What had begun as one family's nightmare had transformed into a catalyst for change, creating space for difficult conversations and genuine connections. For Jamal, the experience had been a harsh introduction to the reality of racism, but also a powerful lesson in resilience and the importance of community. The pool that had initially been the target of hatred had become a symbol of something stronger, the capacity of people to grow, to stand together, and to build something better from the broken pieces.